Hi there, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing a walkthrough service on this Mitchell Riptide Model 30 spinning reel. So this is a light spinning reel, great for probably trout, pan fishing, or even some smallmouth bass, things of that sort. But this is a reel that I've already serviced recently. So when I say walk through, I mean that we're going to go through all the take apart steps and the cleaning steps and all the lube points and the reassembly, and just some of the things to make note of if you happen to have this reel and you want to service it. So that's what this video is about. So we're going to start with taking our handle off here. But this is a neat little reel, and I actually got this on eBay a while back for a pretty cheap price, and it was the only one of its kind that I could find there. So when you take this handle off, you might want to clean that shaft off. There's fresh grease on all these pieces and parts though, so you're going to see a little bit of that in the video. But we'll take our top cap off here. We have a serviceable drag stack in there. I'm going to show you how to get that all taken apart. But Mitchell's a company, they've been around a long time. They've made some real staples in the reel industry, going all the way back to the 300 models and the 302s and 306s and just all kinds of good solid reels. But you got this snap spring in here. Now you want to be careful taking apart any drag stack on any reel, really. Okay, but there's a couple of different washers in here, and I find that using a little screwdriver like this helps usually get all these washers out. I do recommend schematics, taking pictures, or even videos for that matter. But you want to clean out the inside of this spool housing here where the drag stack goes into. Make sure that's really nice and clean. Also, you want to do an oil drop or two right here. There's a little spring on this little lever here. Okay. And when it comes to oils and greases, make sure that you use oils and greases that are designed for fishing reels, like these bottles of oils here, Penn Precision Oil or Real X Oil. Same with the grease. I like to use Penn Precision Blue Grease for anything that calls for that. You don't want to use automotive oils or a lot of those other products that are out there. Should really be designed for fishing reels. Okay, so we've got our drag stack here. So I'm just going to go through each one of these one by one. So we've got just a normal felt drag washer here that goes into place. And you got a metal washer. You got another felt washer. And you want to clean these off as you go when you take these out. And if there's any rust or any corrosion on the metal ones, you need to make sure you clean that off. Take some 4-0 steel wool to that and just wipe them off and scrub all that stuff off there the best that you can. So you got a keyed washer here, another felt washer, and then last metal washer. So clean those pieces up real good. We're going to put our snap ring back into place here. Sometimes this can be a little tricky to do. Sometimes it helps just to take a pair of needle nose. Sometimes for some reason this one is really being stubborn today, but we'll get it eventually. Sometimes you just need to reposition a little bit, and then just sink that down into place. And then once you hear a snap, little snap in there, then it should be just right. Positioning is kind of key when you're doing this stuff, getting the right position on these pieces and parts here. Okay, now that's snapped in there. Okay, so it should be nice and flush in there, and that's basically all you need to do to service the drag stack. So that's real simple. Now we're going to get into the rest of the reel here. So on this reel, you've got a star wheel and a fiber washer here on top of the main shaft here, and you want to clean those pieces off, put those off to the side. Now note, this can be kind of tricky on this reel. You got to get this rotor off before you can remove this plate. And when you go to put everything back on, this plate has to go back on before the rotor. I speak from experience. It has to be that way. So you just want to make note of that. But we've got a little set screw here that we're going to take out, like so. And we've got our lock ring that goes around this nut here and holds that in place. So you don't need, the whole purpose behind this is so that this nut doesn't have to be torqued down too hard. Because what happens with a lot of reels, especially these smaller little ultralight style reels, is you tighten this down too much, and then what happens is your main shaft bottoms out underneath the spool, and then you'll get like a kind of a grind going on. So the whole point behind this is so that this nut doesn't move at all, and it doesn't need to be tightened down super tight. It should be snug. Now this is an 11 millimeter nut here. But in theory, with a reel like this, you should almost be able to just hand tighten this nut and then put that on. You can give it a little turn, with a wrench, but you don't really want to get carried away with it, because that's how you'll get that problem. Okay, so now we're going to pull our spool off. We're going to inspect under here, take a Q-tip or something and clean off any sand, grit, or anything. If you have to, spray some penetrating lube in there, that's fine too. Also note that there is this little washer, this brass washer that's attached to that. Usually it rests here above this plastic ring here. So that's just one little piece that you want to make note of. Now, you really want to pay attention to the orientation of these pieces and parts here. Okay, so this is an area where you want to take a picture perhaps with your phone or your camera, or resort to a schematic, okay? Because all these need to go back just right, okay? But we've got this plastic piece, and I'm going to lay these out one by one so that we kind of remember the order that they have to go in here, and kind of the rough positioning of these pieces and parts here. And then we've also got this guy here. So this is a kind of a fluted bushing, so to speak. Okay, so you take that out. Now, where it gets even a little more complex here is you've got this little spring right here in this position here. It's a little difficult to see on camera, but the little spring's right there. Okay, and this needs to snap out, and then you got to take these screws out, and this is going to give us access to our main bearing right here. So that's the whole point of this, is to do that bearing. Okay, so if you just gently lift up on that. Okay, now this cam can't come out until we take out these pieces here, so we need to do that. Okay. Every reel is different. They all do very similar things, similar functions, but the way they do them, can vary obviously from one reel to the next. So just one little thing that you want to make note of. Now at this point, you should be able to pull out this cam. You want to clean this cam off really, really well. Okay. And also remember the orientation of this plate here because it's going to have to go back the exact same way that it did, like that. Okay, and now we have access. We have access to our main bearings here, and you know, they're clean. But a lot of the time, you know, you might find that they're rusted even or corroded, and so in that case, you know, you know, it'll need a little bit more attention. Now, in order to get this out, I mean, right now I'm just able to pull this out, but that's not always the case with every reel. But with this reel, that you can do that. Okay, so we've got our pinion gear. You want to clean this off real good with a toothbrush. Get all the old grease, all the old debris off there, and then, you know, pack it with some fresh blue grease or whatever reel grease it is that you're using. And then you also want to clean up these ball bearings here. I like to have these little plastic trays nearby. Hit that with some penetrating lube of some kind. Power lube is good, WD-40, Seafoam Deep Creep, or whatever it is that you like to use. All those products are good products, and clean up those bearings real good. And then when you go to put all this back, flood those ball bearings with a little bit of oil, like 2 or 3 drops will do just fine, and spin that around in there, and it should be good to go. Okay, so now we're going to put that down here for a moment. Now we're at the point where you know, you're probably wondering, okay, but when are we going to get into the inside here? Well, that's pretty much going to be now, because there's nothing else that we can do here. Okay, but again, these pieces and parts, they you know, they have to go back in a certain sequence, and that can be pretty tricky sometimes. And you know, if it's a reel that you never worked on before, or you're just not very familiar with it, or you haven't worked on it enough, you know, sometimes you gotta go slow and resort to those pictures or schematics to see where all those pieces and parts line up and where they should go. So we're going to take these 4 screws out here now. We're going to have a look on the inside, and we're going to see what's going on there. Okay, so now we can take this plate off here. Okay, now there's a couple of washers underneath here that you want to make note of. There's 2 of them, and then there's also a bushing that hides under there, and you want to clean off all those pieces and parts real good. Okay, and then when you go to put you know, put all of it back into place, you know, you just do a little dab of some blue grease right there, and you know, it's all good to go. Okay, we're going to put that off to our side here. So now we've got access to our main gear, which is right here. We're going to see what that looks like from underneath. And so that's your main gear. You want to take that toothbrush and clean off all the old grease that's on there real good. Spray it down with some penetrating lubricant, some WD-40 or whatever. Okay, clean it up real good, and then, you know, just re-hit it with some fresh grease, you know, on all these teeth. You know, take a brush to this and just get that grease on there. Don't overdo it. You know, just a light, you know, kind of light film of grease will do just fine. Okay, you don't want to get globs and globs of grease. There is such a thing as over greasing, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so now we've got access to our main shaft, and that's attached right here on this block. So we're going to take that piece apart like so. A little set screw there, and we can pull this off. Same deal here. You want to clean this off real good. I like to take some 4-0 steel wool to this, clean it up real good, get any roughness off of it completely. And then when you're ready to put it back in, you apply some blue grease to this. We'll do a little bit of that just to demonstrate when we're ready to go back. All right, so we've got our cross block. You want to clean this channel out really well. With it like a Q-tip or something like that. You could spray some WD-40 in there as well, and then, you know, repack that with some blue grease. And then we've also got our crosswind block crosswind gear down here, and there's also a little bearing, or not a bearing, but a bushing kind of hiding in here. You can see this little ring that's on the inside there. Okay, and that's basically all the parts. There's also another bushing here on this side, and you can pull that out and clean that up, but you want to clean out this whole housing here. You don't want anything caught up in here, any old grease or oil or dirt, sand, any of that stuff. You want to get rid of all that. Okay, so now that we're done with that, you see that little bushing just came out there. Okay, but now that we're done with that, we're gonna put a little bit of blue grease underneath here, and just kind of back on these teeth here, just kind of gently. Okay, we're gonna stick that back into place like so. Okay, then we got our crosswind block here. All right, you want to do a little bit of blue grease in here. And like I said, I've already really serviced this reel, and so I'm just going to kind of gently reapply a couple of these things, but I'm not going to do all of it because it's just not necessary. But this is simply to talk you through the steps, essentially. So again, 4/0 steel wool to this. Okay, and then you got your shaft there. And, you know, we're basically just kind of going in the reverse order that it went into, or came out as, basically. Okay. And then you've got this little set screw. I like to do a little dab of oil in this hole here, too, which I already have. And you don't need to, you know, snug this down really tight, but you just want a little snug on that, basically. Okay. Like so, and that's that's pretty much it for that. And then at this point, you're ready to reinstall your main gear, like so. And then the other thing that you can do at this point here, just for the purposes of alignment, actually, before you put this in completely, is you can put your pinion gear back into position so that the main gear has something to grab, actually. So I would recommend that you try to do that, and so then you can snap that into place here, and it's all good there. Okay, I'm just gonna do a little dab right there of some blue grease. Okay, but that'll align everything. You get that bearing back into place there, like so. Okay, all right, and now at this point, there's a couple of little things with this particular reel that, you know, I noticed along the way, things to kind of watch out for. So this cam here, so you want to clean this off real good and then apply some blue grease there. I find that it's helpful to put this cam back into position right now while you can see inside here, because this cam has to sink down into, there's like this little housing down here at the bottom. It might be a little difficult to see because this is all kind of dark right here, but there's this little housing that this needs to sink into. And if it doesn't rest in there just right, then you'll have a very difficult time getting this to work properly with this lever here. So I would recommend you try to do that. Then at this point, before you put the plate back on, you put this back into position so that this is all locked down. Okay, this is something that I had to do a couple of times with this particular model. It's a little tricky if you're not familiar with the design of it, which in this case I was not. But again, you know, if you're working on a reel and you're having a problem and it's just not going together quite right, well, it's probably because it isn't quite right. So you know, sometimes it helps to slow down, or just to put it down completely and come back to it another time. I find, you know, some days are just not good days. for working on certain things. So we're going to put these screws back into place, back into position here, like so. Give those couple little turns. Okay, so now we want to make sure that this is correct here with our little spring, and so we're going to just kind of bend our spring back into position here, and we're going to find that little tiny hole right there that it sinks down into. Okay. The way that this is feeling right now, it doesn't feel like it's punching down, so chances are I need to loosen these up a little bit so that that can get seated right. There we go. So it should be like that. Okay, like so. And our anti-reverse lever is snapping just fine, as it should. So now we can snug these back up a little bit. Okay. So that's basically what all that should look like, and now we're ready to put our plate back on. Remember, you have to put the plate back on before you put the rotor back on. All right, it has to do with the way that this is made, this shape right here. It's just the way that it needs to be. Snap that in there. I like to do a little bead of oil on these 4 screws right here. Take a little bit of your reel oil and just lube those up gently. I've already done that with these, and so they should be just fine. But I do like the design of this reel, actually. It's not that bad. Nice little reel, and you know, it's a nice little size for a lot of different types of lightweight fishing, basically. I think it's rated up to 6-pound test, I believe. But yeah, these screws were kind of covered with a little bit of corrosion, a little bit of rust, and so they are a little on the worn side, I find. I've gone through a couple of different screwdrivers to find kind of the right fit with these, putting them back in. I kind of like these ones that you can turn with your fingers like that, and it moves in the palm of your hand there. But that, I kind of like that for some screws that I run into with reels. But I also like these diamond tipped ones as well. These are great for when you're dealing with stubborn fasteners that you're having a hard time getting them out or something like that. So okay, so now we've done all of our inspection of these pieces and parts. Little lube point right here with some oil on this shaft is always good. We'll just do a little bit of that right now just for good measure. But everything else here is pretty good. I do a little lube point here at the top of the cam as well. And you know, in theory, you should have already have oiled your bearing, but you could actually still do it right here if you wanted to. Just do a gentle little bead of oil right there, and that's all you need to do. And then now we can put these pieces and parts back on. You can also just do the tiny little bead of oil right there on the pinion shaft there, just to slide that into place. Okay, and then we're going to put all these pieces and parts back on one by one in sequence, just like so. And then you're ready to put your rotor back on. Don't forget, when you put your rotor back on, hit these points here and here on the seams of the bail with some oil. Those are good points to help you know, loosen up the bail springs, basically. Okay, and then we're going to slide our rotor back into position here. like so. And we're going to put our nut in place. Yeah, and this particular reel, it was actually pretty dirty on the inside, and I spent a lot of time cleaning a lot of old gunk, a lot of old grease out of there. Don't forget, you don't need to over torque this, just kind of gently give it a couple of turns until you start feeling a little bit of tension, and then I just give it just like the tiniest little turn after that. Call it a day, and you can spin it right now and you can tell, okay, it's a nice smooth spin, and that's what you want. You know, there's no grinding or anything like that. And then we'll put our locking ring back in place like so. And then sometimes when you run into this where the hole doesn't quite line up, then that's when you just need to kind of tweak it a little bit and just turn it one way or the other. In this case, I'm just going to tighten it just a little bit more. And then you can do a little bead of oil in that set screw hole as well, if you'd like. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to put that in place, lock that down. So that's in good shape there. Okay, and now we put our spool back on, like so. Put our drag cap back on. One little thing that we forgot though, I was wondering why I wasn't hearing the clicking. Don't forget these two. You have to have your star washer and that little fiber washer, that little red fiber washer. That's got to go back on first. Very important. There we go. Okay, now we'll put the spool in place. You should hear that little click in there. That's what that star wheel is all about. Put our cap back on. That's good for the drag right there. And then we'll put our handle back in place. Don't forget to grease this up with a little bit of reel grease. Do a little bead of oil on this thread if you want. Just do a little tiny one right there. And we'll put that back into position. And that's pretty much it for this reel. It's hopefully ready to do some fishing here. So we're gonna check out our anti-reverse here real quick. That's working good, I think. And we'll check the bail, make sure the bail's working good, nice and smooth. So that's it. That's the Mitchell Riptide Model 30 spinning reel, all serviced up and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe. And we'll see you next time.